What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be ranking the best defenses in college football heading into the 2024 season. A defense can make a huge difference for a team, and 90-something% of the time, defense will win you championships. So as we head into the 2024 college football season, we have to look at which defenses are the most talented. And one defense that is loaded heading into next season is the Ohio State Buckeyes. They managed to bring back a bunch of guys that were supposed to go to the NFL last season, and last season, Ohio State had a top 5 defense already. But Ohio State brings back Denzel Burke at cornerback. They also bring back defensive end Jack Sawyer, and they bring back defensive end JT Tuamaloa. They returned 9 starters from a veteran defense, and they added possibly the best safety in the country, Caleb Downs, from the transfer portal. This defense is going to be very scary for opposing offenses, and have fun scoring on this defense, because the addition of Caleb Downs was actually insane for a team like Ohio State. This will be a very elite defense at the very least in 2024. Defensive coordinator Jim Knowles should continue to build this defense for Ohio State. Ohio State used to be more of an offensive team, but they are probably better on the defensive side of the ball now. And 2024 has the potential to be a massive year for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The next team I want to talk about is Michigan. They probably had the deepest defense in the country. The defense was probably the best in the country last season, and that is exactly why they won a national championship. That defense was one of the best over the last decade, and they played really well together. And I don't think their defense got enough credit for how deep it actually was in depth. Yes, I know they lost a lot from last season, but they have guys that will step up, and they also returned Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant on the defensive line, and they will be a force. They returned Will Johnson in the secondary, and he's one of the top cornerbacks in the country. This defense still has multiple guys that are going to go in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. This will be a top 5 defense again in 2024, and I have no doubt about that. There was way too much depth on that Michigan defense last season, and I still expect them to be elite defensively. The next team I want to talk about is Georgia. Georgia has been a dominant team defensively with Kirby Smart. It is a given for Georgia to have an elite defensive football team with head coach Kirby Smart. They also returned one of the best players in college football on that side of the ball, Malachi Starks. Their 2024 recruiting class is stacked, and they have 5 5-stars on the defensive side of the ball. Ellis Robinson and KJ Bolden could be a day one contributor for that Georgia secondary. That Georgia secondary is going to need some guys to step up because they did lose some crucial pieces there. But those pieces that they added from their 2024 recruiting class have massive potential. This defense is very talented from top to bottom, and it should be one of the best in the country. The next team I want to talk about is Iowa. Kirk Ferentz and defensive coordinator Norm Parker are still there. They lost Cooper DeJean in the secondary, but they should definitely have an elite defense again. They returned Sebastian Castro, Quinn Scholl, and Jamari Harris. They also returned their top 2 tacklers from last season, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. The offense will need to improve if Iowa wants to be a playoff team, but Iowa is just a team that has one of the best defenses in the country and also one of the worst offenses in the country. But their defense helped lead them to a Big Ten championship game last season, and this defense should be just as good as it was last season, if not better. So I expect Iowa to have a top 5 defense. The next team I want to talk about is Penn State. They had the 3rd-ranked defense in the country last season. They bring back 6 starters on defense. They will have a new defensive coordinator though. The new defensive coordinator for Penn State is Tom Allen from Indiana. Penn State also had the number 1 rush defense last season, and they returned Zane Durant and Devon Ellis at defensive tackle. They bring back Abdul Carter, who will now be playing on the edge for Penn State, and he is going to be one of the biggest disruptors in the country. The front 7 for this Penn State team may be underrated, and they will be a force up front. The secondary does have some questions, but they added one of the top cornerbacks in the portal, A.J. Harris from Georgia. A.J. Harris is going to be a huge playmaker for this Penn State secondary. Jalen Reed and Kevin Winston should fill a much bigger role in the secondary in 2024 as well. So we still have some unproven guys that have to step up in the secondary, but this secondary has a lot of talent, and this defense should be one of the best in the country again. The next team I want to talk about is Oregon. Dan Lanning is building an incredible foundation over there. They have a top 4 2024 and 2025 high school recruiting class, and Dan Lanning also uses the transfer portal very well. And if you guys are paying attention, Oregon is now becoming a defensive football team. They had a top 15 scoring defense in 2023. They still have a lot to improve on, but they returned Jordan Birch on the edge. Mateo Yu is back as well, and he should take massive strides as a sophomore. Jeffrey Bossa is back at linebacker, and he's a huge leader to have back on this defense. The secondary has high potential with new additions from the portal, most importantly, the addition of Jabbar Muhammad, who is one of the best cornerbacks in the country from Washington. We know what to expect from Oregon offensively. They will probably have a top 3 offense in the country. But if they want to win championships, the defense will have to continue to show growth under Dan Lanning. But I'm telling you, Dan Lanning is definitely building towards something great. And a national championship is not out of the picture. Oregon is recruiting up there with the top brands in the country, and Oregon hasn't had this much attention in a while. And there's a reason Dan Lanning is getting a lot of attention. Oregon is now a serious contender with Dan Lanning as head coach, and they could be a force in the Big Ten. The next team I want to talk about is Notre Dame. They had a top 10 defense last season. They returned a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball as well. They will have one of the best, if not the best, secondary in college football with Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison coming back. They should also be very strong up front with Howard Cross and Riley Mills back on the defensive line. The new addition of RJ Oben from Duke could play a huge factor on the edge, and he's an edge rusher that is flying under the radar. Notre Dame returns 15 defenders that played at least 100 snaps during the 2023 season. The offense also has potential with Riley Leonard and some of the new additions on that side of the ball, but we aren't talking about offenses, and we know the defense should be one of the best in the country. And I'm telling you, if they take another step forward, they could be a serious contender. Marcus Freeman is a young head coach and he still has a lot to prove, but Notre Dame was a pretty good team defensively last season, and they have a lot to build on moving forward. So Notre Dame could be a serious contender in the 12-team playoffs with head coach Marcus Freeman. The next team I want to talk about is Clemson. The defense did lose some crucial players. They lost Nate Wiggins and Jeremiah Trotter. They also lost some great defensive linemen, but they are very deep on the roster. They had one of the deepest defenses in college football last season. They had many young players emerge last season. Peter Woods and TJ Parker have massive potential. They also bring back Barrett Carter, who is a stud at linebacker. The 5-star freshman Sammy Brown got involved this spring, and he could be a day one contributor. The secondary is also a strong part for this defense. Clemson has been a consistently great defense with Dabo Swinney. They develop talent very well, and this 2024 defense has a lot of potential. They're kind of similar to Notre Dame. They should be a top 10 defense, but the questions come on the offensive side of the ball. Dabo Swinney refuses to use the portal, and that may be the reason for the downfall of this Clemson team the last couple of seasons. But it is not like Clemson is in a huge hole, and we know we could trust the defense. So at the very least, this is still a very solid team, and the defense is always going to give them a huge advantage. The next team I want to talk about is Nebraska. Nebraska was ranked 11th in total defense last season. They have a very good defensive coaching staff. They returned one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, Tony White. It is huge to have back for another season because Tony White is a future head coach. But they also kept Matt Rule, who is staying at Nebraska, and he is heading into year 2 as a head coach for Nebraska. Year 2 for Matt Rule is always a big leap no matter what team he has coached. He was the head coach for Baylor and Temple, and he really turned both of those programs around, and year 2 was a leap. The offense is set up to take strides in 2024 with 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola, but the defense is what will be the strong part for this team. They return a lot on defense. 78% of the production on defense is back from last season. This defense doesn't have any crazy playmakers, but this defense is one of the most balanced defenses in the country, and they play really well together. This is also a very well coached football team, and I expect a bowl game at the very least for Nebraska in 2024. And the last team I want to talk about is Texas. You know, I did almost leave Texas off of this list, but I really felt like I couldn't leave this Texas team off of this list on the defensive side of the ball because they have so much talent on that side of the ball. And I know they still have some obvious questions, but they are building. They did have a weak passing defense last season, but they did have one of the best rushing defenses in the country to make up for a weak passing defense. And even with the weak passing defense, they had a top 15 scoring defense in college football, and they made the college football playoffs. They were a good defense, but they weren't necessarily elite, and that's where they got beat against Washington. But they also have some concerns after losing their disruptors on the defensive line, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. But like I said, they have one of the most talented rosters in college football, but they probably actually added one of the best players in the transfer portal. They added one of the top edge rushers in the country, Trey Moore. He's an addition that doesn't get talked about a lot because he was from the group of 5 level, but he could be a monster on the edge for Texas. And Ethan Burke has a lot of potential on the edge as well. They added Andrew Mukaba, who was a big addition in the secondary. Malik Muhammad is also ready to take a big leap in the secondary for Texas. I really think this secondary is going to take big strides, and this defense should continue to improve, and I think they have a lot of potential. Trey Moore is a huge addition, and he could be one of the most disruptive pass rushers in the country. Trey Moore was an addition that Texas desperately needed to compete at a high level defensively, and I think adding a guy like Trey Moore helps Texas crack the top 10 for this list. But it's not just Trey Moore because this defense has a lot of great playmakers, and I'm interested to see who steps up for this defense. You guys let me know down in the comments below which defenses I am disrespecting and left off this list. Obviously, this was just my opinion, so I'd like to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing. And also consider following my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.